Are you having an affair with Declan Shaw?
What? That's ridiculous. He's my boss.
That's not what I asked.
The last thing I expected to find in my own kitchen on a Tuesday morning was my wife Marta's brother Jake eating my cereal while explaining why I needed to give him $50,000. "It's not really giving, Oliver," Jake said, milk dripping from his spoon as he gestured at me with the confidence of a man who'd never worked a day in his life. "It's investing in family. In the future. In something bigger than your little copywriting gig." I stood there in my bathrobe, coffee mug halfway to my lips, wondering how this overgrown trust fund baby had managed to let himself into my house at 7 in the morning. Marta must have given him a key. Of course she had. "Jake," I said, setting down my mug with deliberate calm, "I write advertising copy for a living. I'm not exactly swimming in venture capital." He laughed, the kind of laugh that rich kids perfect in prep school, dismissive, entitled, utterly convinced that everyone else's problems are just a matter of perspective. "Come on, man. You and Marta pull in, what, $250 combined. You can afford to help family. $250,000. He said it like it was pocket change, like our 15 years of climbing from ramen noodles to middle-class comfort meant nothing. Like the mortgage, the car payments, our daughter Amelia's college fund, and the 1,000 other responsibilities that keep normal people awake at night were just minor inconveniences. "What exactly is this investment opportunity?" I asked, though I already knew I'd hate the answer. Jake's eyes lit up with the fervor of a true believer. "Crypto mining operation. My buddy Declan. You remember Declan Shaw, right? Marta's boss? He's got this incredible setup, industrial-scale operation. We're talking massive returns, Oliver, like life-changing money. Declan Shaw. Of course. Marta's charming, silver-haired boss who drove a Porsche and treated every business meeting like a networking opportunity at a country club. The man who'd somehow convinced my wife that working until 9 p.m. 3 nights a week was investing in her career. And you need $50,000 because buy-in, minimum investment. But Oliver, I'm telling you, in 6 months we'll be looking at returns that'll make your head spin. Declan's already cleared $2 million on his initial investment." I studied Jake's face, the same sharp cheekbones as Marta, the same green eyes, but without any of the intelligence that made my wife attractive. Just entitled expectation wrapped in designer clothes and 3-day stubble that probably took him an hour to achieve. "I'll think about it," I lied. "Don't think too long," Jake said, standing up and leaving his bowl on the counter like he was in a restaurant. "Opportunities like this don't wait around. Declan's only keeping spots open for family and close friends." After he left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the cereal bowl he'd abandoned. The milk had turned slightly pink from the strawberry pieces, artificial coloring bleeding into something that was supposed to be wholesome. It felt like a metaphor, though I couldn't quite put my finger for what. Marta came downstairs 20 minutes later, already dressed in her sharp black suit, phone pressed to her ear. She was always on the phone these days, always dealing with some crisis at the agency that required her immediate attention. "No, tell them the client presentation is non-negotiable," she was saying. "If they can't deliver the mock-ups by Thursday, we'll find someone who can." She grabbed her coffee mug, the one I'd filled and left ready for her, like I had every morning for the past 15 years, and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek without breaking stride. "Jake stopped by," I said. She murmured, still listening to whoever was on the phone. "Sorry, what?" "Oh, Jake. Yeah, he mentioned he might swing by. Something about an investment opportunity? $50,000. That got her attention. She looked at me directly for the first time that morning, phone lowered slightly. "What about 50,000? That's what your brother wants. For some crypto mining scheme with your boss." Marta's expression shifted, not to the surprise or concern I expected, but to something that looked almost like annoyance, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Oliver, can we talk about this later? I'm already running late, and this call is important." "More important than your brother asking for our life savings?" "It's not our life savings," she said, raising the phone back to her ear. And Jake's not stupid. If Declan's involved, it's probably legitimate. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone with Jake's dirty bowl and the growing certainty that something in my carefully constructed life was starting to crack. I spent the morning at my desk, trying to focus on a campaign for a local furniture store, but my mind kept wandering. $50,000. 6 months ago, that would have been a discussion. A long, careful conversation about our finances, our goals, our responsibilities. Now Marta was treating it like a minor inconvenience, something to be dealt with later, after more important things. When had I become less important than her job? The question bothered me more than Jake's ridiculous request. My wife and I used to be partners. We'd built our life together, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice. Now she was dismissing our financial security without even a real conversation. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our bank accounts. We had money, not Jake's kind of money, but enough to be comfortable. Enough to weather emergencies, to take vacations, to help our kids when they needed it. $50,000 would wipe out most of our savings, but technically, we could afford it. That wasn't the point. The point was that Jake had waltzed into our kitchen like he owned the place, made his demands with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no, and expected us to hand over our security for his get-rich-quick scheme. The point was that Marta seemed to think this was reasonable. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, our neighbor Pete was washing his car in the driveway, taking his time, enjoying the October sunshine. Pete ran a small construction company. Real work, honest work, the kind that left you tired at the end of the day but proud of what you'd accomplished. When had I started envying other people's simplicity? My phone buzzed with a text from Marta. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Working late. Again. The third time this week, and it was only Wednesday. I stared at the message for a long time, looking for something that wasn't there. Some acknowledgement that we had things to discuss, some indication that our conversation that morning had mattered to her. Instead, I got 4 words and a heart emoji. I was still holding the phone when it rang. Jake's name appeared on the screen. Oliver! Hey, I was just talking to Declan and he mentioned something interesting. What's that, Jake? Well, he was asking about you, actually. About your work. Apparently Marta's been talking about how talented you are, and Declan thinks there might be opportunities for you at the agency. Better opportunities than what you're doing now. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of opportunities? Senior creative positions. Real money, not freelance stuff. But here's the thing. Declan says these positions usually go to people who understand the business side. People who know how to invest. How to think big picture. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Invest $50,000 in Declan's crypto scheme, and maybe I'd find myself with a better job. Refuse, and maybe I'd stay exactly where I was. That's interesting, Jake. Right? I mean, it's not like there's any pressure or anything. Declan just believes in rewarding people who believe in him. It's how business works at that level. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about the conversation. About the casual way Jake had delivered what amounted to a threat. About how comfortable he seemed with the idea that money could buy access, opportunity, respect. About how my wife worked for a man who apparently thought this was normal. That evening I made dinner for 2 and ate alone. Marta's working late stretched past 9, then 10, then 11. I tried calling once, but it went straight to voicemail. When she finally came home at nearly midnight, she looked tired but oddly energized, like someone who'd had a long day but enjoyed it. Sorry, she said, kicking off her heels in the entryway. Crisis with the Morrison account. We were putting out fires all evening. Jake called me today. Oh? She was looking through the mail, not really listening. He seems to think that investing in Declan's crypto scheme might help my career prospects. That got her attention. She looked up from the electric bill, her expression carefully neutral. What do you mean? He mentioned that Declan has been asking about me, about my work, suggested there might be opportunities at the agency for people who understand the business side. Marta set down the mail and looked at me directly. For a moment, I saw something in her eyes that I couldn't quite identify. Guilt? Annoyance? Calculation? Oliver, I don't know anything about that. If Declan mentioned you, it's probably because I've talked about your work. You're talented. You deserve better than freelance copywriting. And this crypto investment? I don't know. Maybe Jake misunderstood something. You know how he gets when he's excited about business stuff. She was lying. Not about everything, maybe, but about something. I'd been married to her for 15 years. I knew the difference between Marta being tired and Marta being evasive. So, what do you think? I asked. About the 50,000? She sighed, running her hands through her hair. Honestly? We can afford it. And if there's even a chance it could help your career. You think I should do it? I think you should consider it. Jake's not stupid, whatever you think of him. And Declan's been incredibly successful. Maybe it's worth taking a risk. I stared at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and realized I didn't recognize the person looking back at me. When had she become someone who thought $50,000 was a reasonable risk? When had she started measuring opportunities in terms of what they might buy us? When had she started talking about my career with her boss? I'll think about it, I said. But I already knew what I was going to do. I told Jake no on Thursday morning. He took it about as well as I expected, which is to say he acted like I'd personally insulted his mother, his business acumen, and his entire worldview. You're making a mistake, Oliver, he said over the phone, his voice tight with the kind of anger that comes from being denied something you've already spent in your mind. This isn't just about money. It's about relationships, about being part of something bigger. I'm sure it is, Jake. Declan's not going to forget this. He's the kind of guy who remembers who his friends are. Then I guess I'll have to live with that. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. For the first time since Jake had shown up in my kitchen, I felt like I'd made a decision that was actually mine. The feeling lasted exactly 6 hours. Marta came home that evening with the expression of someone who'd been having difficult conversations all day. She set her purse down with more force than necessary and turned to face me with her arms crossed. We need to talk. About the fact that you told Jake no without discussing it with me first. I blinked. I thought we did discuss it. Last night. You said I should consider it. Consider it, Oliver. Not make a unilateral decision about our finances. Our finances that you were willing to risk on a cryptocurrency scheme. Our finances that could have opened doors for both of us. There it was. The truth, finally. This wasn't about Jake's investment opportunity. This was about Marta's career, about her relationship with Declan Shaw, about things she wasn't telling me. What doors, Marta? She hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, I saw the careful calculation behind her anger. She was trying to figure out how much to tell me, how much she could get away with keeping secret. Declan mentioned that the agency is expanding, new positions opening up, senior creative roles that would be perfect for you. And these positions require a $50,000 investment in his crypto mining operation? They require trust, Oliver. They require being part of the team. I stared at my wife, this woman who'd once helped me count quarters to buy groceries, and wondered when she'd started speaking in corporate euphemisms. So what you're saying is that my career prospects depend on whether I give your boss $50,000. I'm saying that opportunities go to people who understand how business works at this level. This level? Yes, this level. The level where real money gets made, where real careers get built. Not freelance copywriting for furniture stores. The contempt in her voice when she said furniture stores hit me like a slap. This was my work she was dismissing. The work that had helped pay our mortgage, that had given us the comfortable life she was now so eager to risk. I see. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're letting pride get in the way of our future. Our future or your future? What's that supposed to mean? It means that 6 months ago you would have laughed at the idea of giving Jake $50,000 for any reason. Now you're acting like I'm the problem for saying no. Marta's expression shifted, and for a moment I saw something that looked almost like panic, like someone who'd been caught in a lie they weren't ready to explain. Things change, Oliver. Opportunities change. I'm trying to think bigger than just getting by. We're not just getting by. We're doing well. We're comfortable. Comfortable isn't enough anymore. Why not? She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up her purse and headed for the stairs. Where are you going? To take a shower. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Marta. She stopped, but didn't turn around. What aren't you telling me? Nothing. I'm not telling you nothing. But the way she said it, too quick, too defensive, told me everything I needed to know. That night, I lay in bed listening to Marta's breathing and thinking about the conversation. About the way she'd dismissed my work, my concerns, my decision. About the casual way she'd suggested that my career prospects depended on paying tribute to her boss. About the fact that she'd had detailed conversations about my future without including me in them. I thought about Declan Shaw, with his silver hair and his Porsche and his easy confidence. I thought about the way Marta's eyes lit up when she talked about work these days, about the energy she brought home from her late nights at the office. I thought about things I didn't want to think about. The next morning, Marta left early for her meeting without saying goodbye. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to breakfast meeting with Declan. Back this afternoon. We should talk more about the investment opportunity. Investment opportunity. Even in a handwritten note, she couldn't just call it what it was, her brother's scheme to separate us from our savings. I spent the morning trying to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every few minutes, I found myself thinking about that note, about the casual way she'd mentioned having breakfast with Declan, about the assumption that we'd continue discussing something I'd already decided. Around noon, I gave up on work and drove to Pete's house. Pete Martinez had been our neighbor for 8 years, and in that time, he'd become something like a friend. He was straightforward in a way that I was starting to appreciate more and more. I found him in his garage, working on an old motorcycle. Oliver, what brings you by? Needed to get out of the house. Thought I'd see what you were up to. Pete wiped his hands on a rag and gestured to the bike. Trying to get this old girl running again. Found her in an estate sale. Previous owner let her sit for about 10 years. Think you can fix her? Everything can be fixed. Question is whether it's worth the effort. We talked about the motorcycle for a while, about engines and restoration and the satisfaction of bringing something back to life with your own hands. It was exactly the kind of conversation I needed. Practical, straightforward, honest. You seem distracted, Pete said after a while. Family stuff. The kind you want to talk about or the kind you want to forget? I considered the question. Pete was a good listener, but this felt too complicated, too personal. How do you explain to someone that your wife seems to be changing into a person you don't recognize? How do you admit that you're starting to suspect things you don't want to suspect? The kind I need to figure out on my own, I think. Pete nodded. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, I'll be here. And I've got beer. I was walking back to my house when I saw Jake's BMW in my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see him sitting at my table, talking animatedly to someone I couldn't see. I let myself in through the front door and heard voices from the kitchen, Jake's familiar entitled drawl, and another voice I recognized but couldn't immediately place. Oliver, Jake called out when he heard me come in. Perfect timing. I want you to meet someone. I walked into the kitchen and found Jake sitting across from a man in an expensive suit. Silver hair, perfect tan, smile that probably cost more than my car. Declan Shaw. Oliver, Declan said. standing up and extending his hand. Great to finally meet you properly. Marta talks about you all the time. His handshake was firm, confident, the kind that said he was used to making good first impressions. Everything about him radiated success, from his Italian leather shoes to his Swiss watch, to the way he seemed to take up more space in the room than his actual size would suggest. "Declan," I said, "what brings you by?" Jake thought it might be helpful if we talked directly, man to man, about the opportunity we discussed. The cryptocurrency investment. Among other things. Declan's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes. "Jake tells me you have some concerns. I thought I might be able to address them." I looked at Jake, who was practically vibrating with excitement, then back at Declan. What kind of concerns did Jake say I had? Perfectly reasonable ones. You're being cautious with your family's financial security. I respect that. But sometimes caution can become paralysis, and paralysis can cost us more than risk ever could. It was a good line, delivered with the kind of smooth confidence that probably worked on a lot of people. But there was something about the way he said it, something rehearsed, calculated, that made me want to push back. What exactly are the risks? Minimal, Declan said without hesitation. The technology is proven, the market is expanding, and we're getting in at exactly the right time. I've already seen returns that exceed my most optimistic projections. And if it doesn't work out, it will work out. But hypothetically, if there were problems, we'd address them as a team. That's the beauty of this kind of partnership. We succeed together, and we handle challenges together. Partnership, team, together. All the right words, delivered with all the right emphasis. But underneath the polished presentation, I heard something else. The assumption that I was already in, that this conversation was just a formality. "I appreciate you coming by," I said. "But I've already made my decision." Declan's smile faltered for just a moment, so briefly that I might have imagined it. Then it was back, brighter than before. "Of course, I understand. But before you finalize anything, I wonder if you'd be interested in seeing the operation firsthand. I'm having a small gathering tomorrow night, just a few investors, some potential partners, nothing formal. Just an opportunity to see what we're building. I don't think—" "Marta's already planning to attend," he said casually. "She's very excited about the possibilities." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Marta's attending an investor meeting? She's been incredibly helpful with the business development side, marketing strategy, brand positioning. Her insights have been invaluable. Jake was nodding enthusiastically. She's practically Declan's right-hand person on this project. I looked between the two of them, trying to process what I was hearing. My wife was involved in this scheme, not just supportive of it, but actively participating in it. Working on it with her boss, attending meetings, developing strategy, and she hadn't told me. "That's interesting," I managed. "So you'll come tomorrow night?" Declan asked. 7 o'clock. My place, casual dress. Just come see what we're doing before you make any final decisions. I wanted to say no. Every instinct I had was telling me to get these men out of my kitchen and forget this conversation had ever happened. But I also wanted answers. I wanted to understand what my wife was involved in and why she'd been keeping it from me. "I'll think about it." "Excellent," Declan said, standing up. "Jake has my address. And Oliver? I think you'll be impressed by what we've accomplished. This isn't some fly-by-night operation. This is the future." After they left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the business card Declan had left on the table. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, expensive design. Everything about it screamed success and legitimacy. Everything except the feeling in my gut that told me I was being played. When Marta came home that evening, I was waiting for her. "How was your day?" I asked. "Good. Busy. The Morrison account is finally coming together." "That's great. Anything else interesting happen?" She was hanging up her coat, not really paying attention. Not really. Just the usual agency chaos. Jake and Declan stopped by today, her hands stilled on the coat hanger. Oh? They wanted to discuss the investment opportunity, among other things. She turned around slowly, and I saw the careful calculation in her eyes again. She was trying to figure out what I knew, what I'd been told, how much trouble she was in. What did they say? Declan mentioned that you've been helping with the business development, marketing strategy, brand positioning. It's just, I've given him some advice, professional advice. It's not a big deal. Advice about a business you want us to invest $50,000 in. Oliver, a business you're attending investor meetings for. It's not what you think. What do I think, Marta? She sat down across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married. Uncertain, vulnerable, human. I think you think I'm keeping things from you. Are you? Not intentionally. It's just, this opportunity is bigger than I initially realized, and I didn't want to get you excited about possibilities that might not pan out. So you decided to get involved yourself without telling me. I decided to do some research, to understand what we'd be getting into before we made any decisions. It was plausible. It even made a certain amount of sense. But something about the way she said it, too smooth, too prepared, made me think she'd been rehearsing this explanation. And what did your research tell you? That this is legitimate. That Declan knows what he's doing. That the returns could be extraordinary. Extraordinary enough to risk our savings. Extraordinary enough to change our lives. I studied her face, looking for the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. She was still there, somewhere behind the careful words and calculated expressions, but she was harder to find than she used to be. I'm going to his meeting tomorrow night, I said. Relief flickered across her features. Good. I think you'll be impressed. Will you be there? Probably. I mean, if you want me to be. I want you to be honest with me. I am being honest. Are you? She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft, familiar, warm. For a moment, it felt like we were still the team we used to be. Oliver, I love you. I love our life together. I would never do anything to jeopardize that. This investment, it's just an opportunity. A chance to build something bigger than what we have now. What we have now isn't enough. What we have now is wonderful. But it could be extraordinary. Extraordinary. The same word she'd used to describe the potential returns. I wondered if that was a coincidence, or if she'd started thinking about our marriage in the same terms she thought about business opportunities. Okay, I said. Tomorrow night. We'll see what Declan's built. She squeezed my hand. You won't regret this. But as I looked into her eyes, I had the sinking feeling that I already did. Declan Shaw lived exactly where I expected him to live, a glass and steel monstrosity overlooking the harbor, the kind of place that appeared in architectural magazines and cost more than most people made in a lifetime. The party was already in full swing when Marta and I arrived. Sleek cars lined the circular driveway, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see well-dressed people holding wine glasses and having the kind of animated conversations that usually involved large sums of money. Impressive, Marta said as we walked toward the front door. It's something, I agreed. Declan greeted us personally, playing the perfect host. He was wearing what I was learning to recognize as his uniform, expensive casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Oliver, Marta, so glad you could make it. Come in, come in. Let me introduce you to some people. The interior of the house was as impressive as the exterior. All clean lines, expensive furniture, and art that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was designed to communicate one message. The person who lived here was incredibly successful. This is quite a place, I said. Thank you. I've been fortunate in my investments. Speaking of which, let me show you what we're doing here. He led us through the main living area, past clusters of people who all seemed to know each other, toward a room that had been converted into what looked like a high-tech command center. Banks of computer screens showed charts, graphs, and scrolling numbers that meant nothing to me, but apparently meant everything to the people studying them. This is our monitoring station, Declan explained. We track mining operations across 6 different facilities, monitor market fluctuations in real time, and adjust our strategies accordingly. It looked impressive. It also looked like something that could have been put together in a day specifically for this presentation. How long have you been operational? I asked. 8 months for the current setup, but I've been involved in cryptocurrency for over 3 years. Started small, learned the market, built relationships. Now we're ready to scale up significantly. A woman in a designer dress joined our group. Declan, you have to tell Oliver about the returns from last month. Sarah's one of our original investors, Declan explained. She came in at the ground level? Best decision I ever made, Sarah said, with the enthusiasm of someone who'd had several glasses of wine. My initial investment has already tripled. And that's just the beginning. That's remarkable, Marta said. What kind of timeline are we looking at for new investors? Depends on the investment level, Declan replied. Larger investments obviously see returns faster, but even at the minimum buy-in, we're projecting significant growth within the first quarter. And the minimum buy-in is $50,000? I asked. For this round, yes. We're being selective about our partners. We want people who understand the vision, who are committed to the long-term potential. I nodded and smiled and asked the kinds of questions that someone genuinely interested might ask. But the whole time, I was watching the people around us, watching their faces, their interactions, the way they talked about money and returns and opportunities. What I saw made me increasingly uncomfortable. These weren't investors. They were marks. Well-dressed, successful-looking marks, but marks nonetheless. They had the slightly desperate enthusiasm of people who wanted very badly to believe in something too good to be true. And in the middle of it all was my wife, nodding along with every word, asking intelligent questions, playing the part of someone who belonged in this world. Oliver? Jake appeared at my elbow with a drink I hadn't asked for. What do you think? Pretty incredible, right? It's certainly something. Declan's been telling everyone about your background, advertising, marketing, brand development. He thinks you'd be a real asset to the team. The team? The inner circle. The people who aren't just investors, but actual partners. There are opportunities here beyond just the financial returns. I looked around the room again, at the expensive equipment and the well-dressed crowd and the host who seemed to have an answer for every question. It was an impressive show. It was also, I was becoming increasingly certain, exactly that, a show. Jake, can I ask you something? Of course. How much research have you done on this operation? I mean, independent research, outside of what Declan's told you. Jake's expression shifted slightly. What do you mean? I mean, have you verified the mining facilities? Checked the market data? Looked into Declan's track record with previous investments? Oliver, come on. Look around you. Look at this place. Look at these people. You think Declan could afford all this if he wasn't legitimate? I think there are a lot of ways to afford things. Jake's face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm being careful with my family's money. You're being paranoid. Maybe, but $50,000 buys a lot of paranoia. We were interrupted by Declan, who appeared with Marta at his side. She looked flushed, excited, like someone who'd been having exactly the kind of evening she'd hoped for. Oliver, I hope Jake's been taking good care of you. I wanted to show you something special. He led us to a quieter corner of the room where a laptop displayed what appeared to be real-time financial data. This is our live feed from the mining operations, he explained. You can see the actual cryptocurrency being generated, the market values, the profit margins. Complete transparency. I studied the screen, watching numbers change and graphs fluctuate. It looked legitimate, but then again, I had no idea what legitimate cryptocurrency mining data was supposed to look like. Impressive, I said. Can I ask about the regulatory side? Compliance, tax implications, that sort of thing? Declan's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. All handled by our legal team. Full compliance with federal and state regulations. We provide complete documentation for tax purposes. And if there are problems, market crashes, regulatory changes, equipment failures, that's why we diversify. Multiple facilities, multiple currencies, multiple strategies. We're not putting all our eggs in one basket. He had an answer for everything. Smooth, confident, reassuring answers that addressed my concerns without actually providing any specific information. I'd like to see some documentation, I said. Financial statements, legal compliance reports, independent audits. The flicker in Declan's eyes lasted a little longer this time. Of course. Though I'm sure you understand, we have to be careful about proprietary information, competitive advantage and all that. Naturally. But surely there's some documentation you can share with potential investors. Absolutely. Marta, didn't you mention that Oliver likes to be thorough with his research? He's very detail-oriented, Marta said. There was something in her voice, pride maybe, or possibly annoyance. I appreciate that, Declan said. In fact, why don't we set up a meeting next week? Just the three of us. I can walk you through everything in detail, answer all your questions, show you whatever documentation you need to feel comfortable. That sounds perfect. Excellent. Marta, you'll coordinate with my assistant? Of course. As the evening wore on, I found myself watching my wife more than listening to the conversations around us. She was in her element here, networking, discussing strategy, fitting seamlessly into this world of expensive suits and expensive promises. She was also, I realized, flirting, not obviously. Not in any way that would be inappropriate at a business function. But there were small things, the way she laughed at Declan's jokes, the way she touched his arm when making a point, the way she seemed to gravitate toward him throughout the evening, the way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching. We were getting ready to leave when I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. Two men in expensive suits were talking near the bar, their voices low but not quite low enough. "Ma classic setup," one was saying. "High-end presentation, impressive returns for early investors, bring in new money to pay the old money. How long do you think he can keep it running? Depends on how many marks he can find." But eventually. They noticed me listening and moved away, but I'd heard enough. In the car on the way home, Marta was practically glowing. "That was incredible," she said. "Did you see the setup? The technology? The people involved? I saw a lot of things. Declan really knows what he's doing. And Oliver, the opportunities he mentioned, not just the investment returns, but actual career opportunities. He's talking about expanding the marketing side, bringing in people with real expertise. People like you. People like us. This could be exactly what we've been looking for." I drove in silence for a while, trying to figure out how to tell my wife that I was pretty sure her boss was running a Ponzi scheme. How to explain that the opportunity she was so excited about was probably going to end with a lot of people losing their life savings. How to ask her why she'd been flirting with another man. "Marta," I said finally, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. Are you having an affair with Declan Shaw?" The question hung in the air between us like a live wire. Marta went completely still, staring straight ahead through the windshield. "What? You heard me? Oliver, that's ridiculous. He's my boss. We work together." "That's not what I asked." She turned to look at me, and in the light from the dashboard, I could see something in her eyes that might have been guilt or fear or anger. "No," she said. I am not having an affair with Declan Shaw. But you want to be. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've been working late 3 nights a week. You've been involved in his business ventures without telling me. You've been talking about my career with him, making plans that involve our financial future. And tonight, I watched you flirt with him for 3 hours. I was not flirting. You were touching his arm, laughing at his jokes, hanging on his every word. I was being professional. I was networking. That's how business works at this level. This level again. Yes, this level. The level where people make real money, where real opportunities exist. Not the level where we count pennies and worry about taking any risks. The level where married women flirt with their bosses? I was not flirting. But she said it too loud, too fast, too defensively. The way people say things when they're not entirely sure they're true. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. That night, I lay in bed listening to Marta breathe and thinking about everything I'd seen and heard. The impressive presentation that felt too polished to be real. The investors who seemed more desperate than confident. The overheard conversation about marks and setups and paying old money with new money. My wife's hand on another man's arm. I thought about 15 years of marriage, of building a life together, of the 1,000 small compromises and accommodations that make a partnership work. I thought about trust and how fragile it was, and how quickly it could be damaged by things left unsaid. I thought about the fact that I was pretty sure my wife was falling for a con man, and that she might be taking our marriage down with her. The next morning, Marta left early again. Another breakfast meeting, she said. More crisis management for the Morrison account. I waited until her car was out of the driveway, then I picked up my phone and called Pete. I need that beer you mentioned, I said when he answered. Bad night? Bad everything. Come on over. I'll put the coffee on. An hour later, I was sitting in Pete's kitchen, telling him everything. The investment scheme, the party, the conversation in the car, my growing certainty that my wife was involved in something that was going to end badly. Pete listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. So what are you going to do? He asked finally. I don't know. If I'm right about Declan, then Marta's about to get caught up in something that could destroy her career, our finances, maybe our marriage. If I'm wrong. If you're wrong, then you're a paranoid husband who doesn't trust his wife. Exactly. But you don't think you're wrong. No, I don't. Pete refilled our coffee cups and sat back down. You know, I've been married 22 years, and in all that time I've learned one thing about marriage and trust. What's that? When your gut tells you something's wrong, your gut is usually right. The question is what you do about it. What would you do? I'd find out the truth. Whatever it cost me, whatever it meant for my marriage, I'd find out the truth. Because the alternative is living with doubt, and doubt will kill a marriage faster than almost anything else. I thought about that as I walked home. About truth and doubt and the price of knowing versus the price of not knowing. I thought about my wife's hand on another man's arm and the way she'd looked at him when she thought no one was watching. I thought about the fact that I was pretty sure I already knew the truth, and that the only question was what I was going to do about it. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out exactly what Declan Shaw was running, and exactly how involved my wife was in it. Whatever it cost me.